Radical Radio Collective.
Good afternoon, listeners. You are tuned into 4ZZZ on 102.1 FM, and this is Eco Radio, Australia's longest-running peace and environment radio show, taking over your middle of the day in the middle of your week airwaves.
End of the month?
End of the month, thank God.
1/12 of the way through the year already. Let's go.
Thanks, Zack.
Yeah, the slow movement of time speeds up with every year, doesn't it?
Thank you.
As we get older.
Time's a flat circle.
I still don't know what that means.
It doesn't mean anything.
Deep.
That's so true, Dave. So true.
Sure.
My name is Zack, and my pronouns are he, they, and I'm joined by...
Izzy, she, they.
And Dave, he, him.
And I want to start off by acknowledging and paying my respects to the custodians of the country on which we broadcast. We are located in the city Magingin on Turrbal Yuggera Ugrapul land. I also want to acknowledge and pay my respects to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are listening in today. Our radio waves reach Kabi Kabi and Jinibara country in the north, Waka Waka country in the west. In the east, we pay our respects to the Quandamooka people, and down south, we reach Commonberry, Nagaragwal, Munanjali, Wanjirabara and Yugambeh countries. There is no Crown land. On today's program, we're going to be talking about some of the latest news that's been going on around in the world.
Yep.
And then we're also going to be talking about the water hyacinth, which is an invasive plant species that can be found here in South-East Queensland.
Yeah, it really clogs up the waterways.
Because as Issy and I discussed, I think about 3 weeks ago, there was a report that came out that stated that 81% of the budget directed towards Australia's threatened species needs to go to the management of invasive weeds. And I thought it would be useful to give an example of just how bad it can get, particularly with the water hyacinth. They really start to terraform waterways and what waterways they're in. But I believe you had some news for us.
Yeah,
Dave?
so here's some news from the Western Downs. Coal seam gas miners have withdrawn their application to mine after pushback from 4 Springvale farmers. The farmers coined the Springvale 4, cautiously celebrating after Arrow Energy withdrew their regional interest development approval after almost 2 years of opposition. Springville, on Queensland's Western Downs, just south of Dalby, is part of Arrow Energy's Surat gas project, which proposes to include 2,500 gas wells in the Surat Basin. However, the Springvale 4 have fought the project, arguing that the wells will deplete their water aquifers and kill their farms in this drying climate. One of the Springvale 4, Doug Brown, told the ABC that water levels are dropping in his bores, which were drilled in the 80s. Even with the withdrawal of the regional interest development approval last week, Arrow Energy announced it will drill a further 250 wells around Miles, Chinchilla and Dalby, 30 kilometres north of Springvale. So the Springvale 4 are concerned that their farms will still be impacted by the Surat gas project. Nearby landholder Russell Benny told the ABC that Arrow Energy's withdrawal of the RIDA, the regional interest development approval, was a good thing but not a long-term solution. He said they're still intending on mining the properties or mining very close to the properties, Mr. Benny said. Arrow Energy was fined $1 million by Queensland's Department of Resources after they were found to be drilling 48 deviated wells under 13 properties, often without the property owner's knowledge or consent. The fine equates to just under $21,000 for each illegal well. So Arrow Energy is the running this gas project, the CSG project, and a couple of years ago they were found to be drilling at angles underneath people's properties to get at the coal seam gas without the landholders' knowledge, and they were found fined $21,000 each.
Wow.
which is nothing.
Do you think I would be fined a lot more if I did that to my neighbour?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, if
Yeah,
you
of
just
course.
started building tunnels underneath your properties, your neighbour's property, I can imagine there would be some like stink up.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But since it's gas, it's okay.
yeah. So that's what that's what they learn from being fined. Is if they make enough money from those wells, because it doesn't mean that the wells are now destroyed or ended. Those wells will still go getting gas. They've just been fined for it.
That is the unfortunate trade-off, where if lots of these companies, they just see as like a fine as how much it costs to actually do the thing rather than a penalty for doing
Yeah,
the thing.
yeah.
And just a slap on
So
the
there
wrist.
is some good news that the approval was taken away, withdrawn by Arrow Energy themselves, but that doesn't mean that the projects are going to stop altogether. It just means for these 4 properties there isn't any approval.
Okay. Is there any like word of any future properties that could be impacted by it?
Yeah.
I suppose.
Definitely. There's 2,500 wells that are going to be put across the Surat Basin. I used to work at a CSG mine in the area of Miles, and they're not going to stop. They keep on saying that it's natural gas for the switch to renewables, but is it?
Is it truly?
Maybe not 2,500 wells worth of it.
Yeah.
Well, that's a bit depressing. Thank you for that.
It's news. Yeah,
It is the
what
news.
are you going to say?
Yeah.
It's always going to be depressing, no?
People need to be aware. So we'll shift to some of my news then, which I don't know if it's as depressing, but there's the potential for it to be further depressing in the future, depending on how it goes, I guess. But 7 fire ant nests have been found 5 kilometres south of Yamundi on the Sunshine Coast in a housing development, and this detection is 40 kilometres further north than the incursions that were found near Caloundra last year, and marks the furthest north that fire ants have been detected since they were detected and then eradicated in Gladstone in 2016. Currently, there are 12 officers who are patrolling a 500-metre area surrounding where the fire ant nests were found, to search for any other fire ant nests that could be within the area. But it isn't expected that these ants are related to those found near Caloundra. So it's not like the ants wandered up there from 40 kilometres away.
They were brought.
Yeah, through turf.
Accidentally, probably.
Yeah, through turf or soil, most likely. And there's current DNA testing underway to identify where the ants have come from. So you can use things like your population genetics. So if you find that the ants that were found in Caloundra are more closely related to not Caloundra, excuse me. The ant nests a bit south of Yamundi are more closely related to those that are found in Brisbane or like around turf, for example, then it's again just going to solidify the fact that these ants did not walk up there from the Sunshine Coast, instead were transported. So that's the way to guarantee it.
What is the extent of the population in South-East Queensland? How far outside of Brisbane do they go?
So I think there were a few found in Oakey last year.
Okay,
so they're west of the Great Dividing Range now.
Yeah.
They have been found in Toowoomba. There was some found up in Woodford recently as well within the past year. There's some in Caloundra. I think they're almost at the border, like fully settled at the border now with New South Wales, that is. So we're talking about a serious sized bit of area, much larger than the initial incursion. I have a lot of thoughts on this topic, so at some point we may do a full episode on it, just because I've got a lot of things up in there at the moment. But going back to the ants that were found up near Yamundi, this isn't the first time the ants are believed to have hitchhiked in materials beyond their current eradication zone. So if you remember, in November last year, there was a really big concern in Byron Bay, as there were some ants that were found and then eradicated. They had established themselves in Byron Bay, and they've since been removed, thankfully, but that was found in turf and resulted in the turf has prohibited it from moving from Queensland to New South Wales.
Yeah, right.
So that's no good. And for why these fire ants are bad, if you don't know, fire ants are one of the most invasive species in the world, arguably the most invasive. This is a species that has caused deaths in Texas because, unlike most venomous things where you develop a resistance to the venom, fire ant venom, on the other hand, you get more susceptible to it the more times you are bitten.
Really?
Yeah. Fortunately, there's been no deaths here in South-East Queensland. There have been a few close cases at some points, but this is an invasive species that has resulted in deaths in the past. And also, they're absolutely awful for the natural environment. If you guys have seen the TV show Invincible.
No.
Okay.
The cartoon?
The cartoon, yeah. There's this essentially like another species of human that went through a whole eugenics process of becoming the strongest, and these ants are just voided up, and they can completely remove other ant species from the local ecosystem. They also can damage livestock a lot of the time because they, as livestock are bitten, they get more susceptible to the venom. They die.
So what is the venom builds up in the body?
Yeah.
Yeah, so if I'm just going to jump in, Zack.
Yeah, you're right.
Last year there was a Senate inquiry into red imported fire ants in Australia. So if you ever want to have, either for personal reasons or what we should really do, is have a deep dive into the submissions that were given for that investigation, which included the allergy, peak ASCIA, which is the peak body for allergy specialists in Australia. They submitted something, and whilst I can't find the specific quote, they said that anaphylactic shock and those types of full body immune reactions would increase if it continues to go unregulated. I think they compared it to almost a second COVID pandemic within regards to the financial and health effect it would have. So it's way beyond our animals or our wildlife. It's actually, it relates to humans. And there are 100+ submissions for the inquiry as well. So if you want to, dig through and find this massive Senate inquiry, there are so many comments from professionals talking about the devastating effects it has, not only financially, but just with livestock, people, everything that it fire ants affect.
They also really, really like electrical cables, and will build in and around electrical cables, which causes issues with
Why?
Just freaks.
They love the buzzing, or?
I'm not sure.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Because it's so hard to regulate them as well, in and out as they come into Australia, and if they leave interstate as well. And a lot of people just aren't aware of it as well, or don't realise how much of a problem it is. It seems like it's kind of this hidden, not disease, but this kind of quiet killer almost. It's around $1 billion has been spent in an attempt to eradicate them by 2032. And that's what the submission looked at.
Since 2001, it's been about $1.4 billion to the National Fire Ant Eradication Program. And I know there's a lot of controversy around that program in itself because there is a lot of funding spent on it. I do want to highlight that this has been the most successful fire ant suppression program in the world. In Texas and China, they can spread up to 80 kilometres per year, whereas in South-East Queensland, we've kept it down to 5 kilometres a year.
That's great.
So it's great that they've slowed it, but they're still expanding, sort of thing. And I believe the statistic was 90% plus of Australia is suitable habitat for that of fire ants. So this, if it's not kind of like stopped here, it will become a national issue.
So yeah, take it with understand that doing our best.
And this was a quote from Reese Pianta, who is the Invasive Species Council Advocacy Manager. He says that fire ants are one of the world's worst super pests, and their unchecked spread will result in economic damage greater than that caused by the cane toads, rabbits, feral cats and foxes combined.
Yeah, wow.
Which is very sobering, because feral cats and rabbits in particular, we know how bad they've been for Australia. And the cane toad as well. Did you have anything you wanted to talk about, Izzy?
Albeit it is quite possibly the most depressing of them all.
Oh, okay.
It's not a competition.
It isn't, no, but it's science. So a recent study has been published in the Lancet journal about the life expectancy in the Gaza Strip at the moment. It is almost half since the war started, with the average life expectancy dropping from 75.5 years to 40.5 years.
Jesus.
And the decrease is higher in men at negative 51.6% than in women, negative 38.6%. Of course, if you have ever worked in social sciences, you know that population getting updated stats about a population, there is almost always a kind of dark shadow of lag within regards to how super relevant it is, or how super accurate it is. So these guys cross-referenced the list of fatalities reported by the Palestinian Ministry for Health in the period of October 7, 2023 to August 30, 2024, with the refugee register maintained by the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestinian Refugees, which covers about 66% of the Gaza Strip population. Alongside census data and vital registration data, they produced estimates of life expectancy losses in the Gaza Strip for the first 12 months of the war. Of the genocide, pardon me. There are a few different scenarios that they have kind of listed out based off official counts, including estimations of people reported missing or under the rubble. There's also kind of a low ball and a high ball scenario that they have projected, which is based off deaths with identifying information versus deaths that are based off the official account of fatalities. So there is some sort of kind of gap within regards to the data, because obviously, as we know, there is not the most perfect coverage on deaths in Gaza at the moment. So these life expectancies aren't the most accurate, but they do give a good kind of glimpse into how much this genocide has affected people in the Gaza Strip, and particularly Palestinians. And it's mind-boggling how almost 50%, it almost halved since the war had begun. Authors also highlighted that none of the scenarios include the indirect effects of war / lack of access to healthcare and malnutrition on mortality. So that is purely based off just violence, essentially. So we may never get a proper, perfect expectancy until much years later. So I think it's important, whilst the ceasefire is in the motions of happening, it's still important to keep an eye on the target and keep an eye on making sure that this doesn't get forgotten. So yeah, a bit of a somber news story, but I think it's important to keep them in mind. So yeah, that's your Eco Radio News.
Solid.
Yeah.
We'll go to a song up next. This one is a request from Marky.
Hey, Marky.
Marky also says that he's out there treating water hyacinth at the moment.
Oh, nice.
Oh, wow.
Karawatha.
So, you're telling me subscribing to 4ZZZ didn't give you enough warm inner glow? Here's the thing, you could be like Ian. Ian subscribed to his business and chucked a $50 donation on top of that. Be an Ian and head to 4zzz.org.au to subscribe and donate today. Sounds like a good plan to me.
You're listening to Eco Radio, the radio of the future.
You are listening to Eco Radio, the radio of the future. Thank you, small child. Hey, that was like 90% of the way there.
Good job.
Oh, we'll take that one.
In the most monotone voices as well.
I remember a friend and I, we recorded his voicemail message. It was just 5 of us speaking at the same time. I was like, this is Stanley's. Multiple Stanleys.
Real hive mind situation.
Yeah, he was an occupational therapist as well, so he was getting a lot of business-related phone calls, which was quite funny.
Oh, you just broke it up a little bit.
Yeah, he asked for it. He requested it, so...
He asked for it.
Yeah, so... No, he did.
You asked for it.
Victim blaming. And if you wanted to support 4ZZZ Radio and Eco Radio as well, head to our website, 4ZZZ.org.au/support. There is a whole load of different tiers for different subscribers, but if you would like to receive some warm inner glow in this new year, then please head over there.
Under 18s and pets, you can subscribe for $25. Pets don't even have to be living in your house.
Well,
they can just be like, I see a bat every now and then. That's a pet.
It's an honorary pet. Nice.
Concession is $40. Full subscription is $80, and a passionate subscription is $140. You get a tote and a T-shirt with the wonderful George Levi illustration design on it. And if you're really passionate, you can be a super sub for $500.
And get your name downstairs as well, and a special little pin as well.
Yeah.
So, and don't forget, every month now we do our monthly subscriber prize. This month it is the Suitcase Showcase vinyl pack. Suitcase Records is a lovely local record company that supports local Brisbane artists. So if you would like to go in the running for that, then check them out on 4ZZZ.org.au/support. I believe there is someone downstairs in the reception as well, so if you prefer that face-to-face contact, you can visit us on Barry Parade, or you can give us a ring on 32521555.
Up next, we're going to be talking about the water hyacinth. Those ugly weeds. Well, they're not so ugly because they were brought here as an ornamental plant, but ugly on the inside.
On the inside.
Yeah.
In their cells.
Yeah. They're not like an oyster where they've got a rough exterior and
gross interior.
Gross on the inside. They're much more subtle in their ugliness than that.
So tell us more about these things.
So I first want to say why we actually are talking about it, because I think it's important to give an example of something that Issy and I discussed about 3 weeks ago, and this was a report that came out at the end of December last year that was conducted by April Recede from UQ, and it found that 81% of costs for threatened species recovery needs to go towards invasive weed management. And you'd think, that's a lot. So I think it was put at about 25% of Australia's GDP would be needed to recover.
Specifically, it was estimated the annual cost to fully restore populations of 1,657 threatened terrestrial and freshwater species, which was about $583 billion. So yes, about 25% of Australia's GDP.
And then 81% of that $523 billion would need to go towards the management invasive weeds.
Yeah, which is large.
Yes. And so I think it's important to talk about why weeds are as problematic as they are a lot of the time. I'm going to use the water hyacinth for an example, just because it's pretty prominent and it's a very good case study for how weeds can terraform their environment and make it less hospitable for other native species that we have here.
Yep.
So the water hyacinth is an aquatic invasive species native to South America, and as I mentioned, it was initially introduced as an ornamental plant, and with a lot of ornamental plants, they get out and it just turns out they're pretty bad for the environment. Hey.
Yeah, lantana was the same. It was brought over as an ornamental plant.
So the water hyacinth is floating, meaning it's surface dwelling, and is perennial, so that means it's quite a long-lived plant as well. And it can reach up to 1 metre high. These plants produce runners, which is a stem that grows horizontal to the ground and forms another plant with its own root system, and they can also reproduce by seeds. So with that runners like system of growth, they can grow and reproduce very, very quickly. So in 5 days, they can double their biomass.
Yeah, right.
That's
a lot.
That's wild.
That's very quick.
Yeah. And part of the reason why these plants are problematic is because of how much they alter the environment that they're in. So they lower the oxygen content of the water. This is obviously bad for things like fish, anything that was just living under the water and has to breathe water, for example. They can outcompete native water plants that live both under the water and on top of the surface, again, just because they can
produce so fast.
Yeah, double in size every 5 days. The plant has a high water concentration too, so 95% of the plant is water. And this is very problematic for when you're doubling in size every 5 days and you're in quite a small pond. Because it's just going to be absorbing a lot of that water, and that takes the water out for the other organisms that are living underneath it. It can also increase organic sediment. So this means that when the plant dies, it just falls into the water, right? And that means there's more biological mass going around, and this further decreases the oxygen concentration of the water and reduces water quality as well.
Yeah, I'd imagine it would throw off that balance of acidity or pH and that.
Yeah, probably like it messes with like nitrates.
Nitrogen. Nitrates.
Yeah. And it also can result in less sunlight being under the water. Obviously, if they're on top, less can go underneath, and that means it impacts all of the plants living underneath the water as well. And it can also change the hydrology of the water. So if you get like a massive amount of this weed on top of the surface, it alters how a river could run, for example. It could make it slower. It could just clog stuff up, I suppose, and that makes it difficult for fish, etc., to move downstream. Very problematic all around. And I believe that they were ranked among the top 20 most invasive plant species in South-East Queensland. And that is after there was a very useful method of controlling these plants. So there's 3 species of weevil and 1 species of grasshopper that is found to essentially only eat the plant that is found. Like, it would only eat plants that are found here. Only eat that plant, sorry. It wouldn't eat any others found in South-East Queensland, unless they're also invasive, excuse me.
So it only target the water hyacinth, and then the weevil and the grasshopper would die out afterwards?
Yeah, exactly. So it's a very good example of like a biological control where if you find things that are specific enough, as in they won't damage the local environment like they did with the cane toad. We've learned our lesson from that we should not introduce things to an environment if we're not entirely sure that they will do their intended job. So like the biological control testing process is very, very rigorous now. They spent years doing this sort of thing, and usually the same occurs for other weeds that are here in Australia now. I used to work in the Department of Agriculture and Fisheries, and kind of like the testing for that takes decades. They make sure it's really, 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 really thorough these days.
Yeah.
But I think it just shows how good biological controls can be.
Yo.
We got a sub. Yippee.
Wow.
Let me have a look at that
Thanks
one.
so much, subscriber.
So this one was from Varania, and they are from Capra, so thank you very much for that one.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Probably jumped onto 4zzz.org.au/support, maybe.
Yeah, and this was a text from Sean McGrath. They said a hyacinth took over the Bremer and Brisbane River in the 1800s.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And it's partly because of things like the weevil that were introduced that were able to get it under a lot more control than it was, because it'd be really bad if they were at their full capacity at the moment.
Yeah, I've also seen boats control it, basically like by picking it up with a wheel of some sort, and then, keeping it out of the waterways that way.
And I think it's cool to show that although these plants are invasive and they are huge problems, if there is enough time spent investigating them, there is the chance out there for a biological control that will only target the plant itself. So there are some neat solutions to things like this sometimes.
Yeah, I wonder if there's a biological control for fire ants. Maybe we need to introduce some anteaters.
Oh, that'd be sick.
Well, we've already got anteaters.
Yeah, we got Australian.
We got echidnas.
Yeah.
In doing research for this, I also found an older study, albeit, about how water hyacinths can remove arsenic from arsenic-contaminated drinking water in Bangladesh. And apparently it is, like, a characteristic of this plant is that it can, highly tolerant of heavy metals, including nickel, lead, and mercury. So if we could just pick it up out of our native waterways and put it in a place where it thrives a little bit better.
Yeah, maybe like mining tailing dams or quarries that have been filled in with water.
Yeah, so it was completely random, just looking through, finding photos, and then finding this study that, apparently it is quite an effective, a natural means of removing arsenic from drinking water without a monetary cost.
That's cool.
Yeah,
we need to, if we have like a big puddle full of all those heavy metals, we introduce the water hyacinth and then we get rid of it again. Oh, then we introduce the weevils to take care of the water hyacinth, and then we put all the native dudes back in there.
Nice.
Yeah.
We'll pitch it.
We'll that's the eco radio plan for water hyacinth.
Big plans in 2025.
And up next, we're going to be doing a little thing. This one's actually sung by our very own Dave, and it is the Bushcare Roundup.
It's a Bushcare Roundup. They've been pulling out weeds, and then they put in trees. It's the Bushcare Roundup.
So we've got quite a lot of events that I found. I didn't want to really put it down to 8 because I want to make sure that everyone has something out there they can attend if they want to. So on Thursday the 30th from 7:30 till 9:30 there is the Lota Creek Habitat Group Bushcare Working Bee, and that one is at 44A Auvern Street, Lota. At 8 o'clock there is the Rally for Reform Demand Stronger Nature Laws Now. That one is 1 Eagle Street in Brisbane City.
Who's running that one?
Queensland Conservation Council. Then from 6 till 7:30 on Thursday the 30th, there is the Tamarookum Biosecurity Awareness Workshop at Tamarookum Memorial Hall in Tamarookum.
Nice. On Friday the 31st at 7:30, there is the Summer Pademelon Survey at 148 Mountain View Road in Maleny. At 7 o'clock, there is the Friends of the Pine Ridge Conservation Park Frog Walk at 95 Poinsettia Avenue in Runaway Bay.
On Saturday, starting at 6 a.m, you can clean up for the hatchlings at various beaches from Noosa to North Bribie Island.
For that one, Dave, it's like clearing up beaches for turtle hatchlings.
Yeah.
Just to clarify for people that may have not got that.
At 7 a.m, you can go to the Tall Trees Circuit Park Bushcare Working Bee. That's at 32 Tall Trees Circuit in Wakerley. At 8 o'clock a.m, you can go to the Naturally GC Kumbaba walking in our wetlands. That's happening in Kumbaba. At 8 o'clock, you can go to the Mother of Millions Bushcare Working Bee. That's 47 Fleming Road in Chapel Hill at Theka. At 8 a.m. as well, you can go to the Bonnigan Bushcare Group tree planting. That's happening in Bonnigan. At 8:30 a.m, Bowie's Flat Wetlands Bushcare is happening. That's at 83 Halstead Road in Cooperoo. At 9:30 a.m, you can go to the Naturally GC Kids Scaly Reptiles Workshop. That's at Pimpambar.
On Sunday the 2nd, from 6 till 9 a.m, we have the Taringa Community Gardening Bee, and that one is at 9 Heroes Avenue, Toowong. From 8 till 10 a.m, we have the Crosby Road Bushcare Working Bee at 12 Beatrice Terrace in Ascot. And then from 3:15 till 5 p.m, there is the Echidna Walk and Talk, and that one is Baronia at Baronia Bushland Reserve, Conlon Street in Baronia Heights.
And that's all we have for the Bushcare Roundup.
Yeah, that's all we have for Eco Radio this week.